I don't know exactly when things started to shift between Marlene and me. Maybe it was slow, creeping in like a fog I didn't notice until I couldn't see in front of me anymore. Or maybe it happened all at once. The moment she looked at me with something that wasn't love, or even anger, but boredom. I remember that night in perfect detail. I had just gotten home from work, exhausted but looking forward to a quiet evening. The house smelled like her perfume, something floral and sharp. But there was something else too, something off, a tension in the air that I couldn't quite name. She was already at the dinner table, wine glass in hand, her long fingers tracing circles around the rim. "We need to talk," she said. That phrase alone should have sent alarm bells ringing, but I was too tired to brace for impact. I sat down across from her, forcing a small smile. "All right, what's on your mind?" She studied me for a long moment, as if debating whether or not to say what she was about to say. And then she did. "I don't think you're a real man." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe she had actually said it. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Marlene leaned back in her chair, swirling the wine in her glass before taking a slow sip. "You're predictable. Safe. I don't feel anything exciting anymore." I felt my stomach twist, the words settling in like stones at the bottom of a lake. "I work hard. I take care of you. I do everything I can." She held up a hand, stopping me mid-sentence. "See, that's exactly what I mean. You think being responsible makes you a man, but it doesn't. You don't take risks. You don't take charge." I blinked at her, feeling like I was in some kind of alternate reality. The woman I had loved, the one I had built a life with, was sitting across from me, telling me I wasn't enough. "So, what are you saying?" I asked, my voice quieter now. She set the glass down, resting her chin on her hand. "I don't know, Gerald. I just think I need more." More. It was such a simple word, but it held the weight of something enormous, something dangerous. I looked at her, really looked at her. The way she was too calm, the way her eyes weren't full of the usual warmth, the way she wasn't pleading with me to understand. No, this wasn't an argument. This was a declaration. And that's when I realized something. She wanted me to feel small. She wanted me to feel like I wasn't enough so she wouldn't have to be the villain, so that whatever came next, she could convince herself she wasn't doing anything wrong. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Have you already found someone else?" She didn't even flinch. She just tilted her head slightly, a smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. She didn't answer, and that silence was all I needed. Something inside me cracked, not with rage, not with sadness, but with clarity. I had spent years trying to be the perfect husband, thinking that love was about consistency, effort, stability. But to Marlene, love was something else entirely. She wanted chaos. She wanted drama. And in that moment, I made a decision. If she thought I wasn't a real man, then maybe it was time to stop trying to be the man she wanted. Maybe it was time to be something else entirely. So I stood up. "All right, Marlene," I said, my voice steady. "If that's how you feel, I won't argue with you." She blinked, clearly surprised. She had expected a fight. She had expected me to beg. But I just grabbed my jacket, picked up my keys, and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" she called after me. I didn't even turn around. "To figure out what comes next," I said, and I left. This was just the beginning. I drove for hours. I didn't have a destination in mind, only the need to be anywhere but home. The road stretched ahead of me, dark and empty, the headlights cutting through the night like a blade. My mind was racing, but at the same time it was blank, like my body was on autopilot while my thoughts tried to catch up to what had just happened. Marlene's words echoed in my head. "You're not a real man." I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white. What does that even mean? I had done everything right. I had built a life with her. I had given her stability, love, commitment. Wasn't that enough? But no, she needed more. More excitement, more danger, more of something I apparently wasn't giving her. And yet, she hadn't denied it when I asked if she had someone else. That smirk, that silence, it told me everything. She wanted me to suspect. She wanted me to feel small, and I had almost let her. But not anymore. I pulled into a gas station, the fluorescent lights humming above me as I parked. I needed a minute to breathe, to stop my hands from shaking. I stepped out, the cool night air hitting my face, and walked inside. The place was mostly empty, except for the cashier, a guy in his 50s with a thick mustache and tired eyes. I grabbed a bottle of water, paid, and was about to head back to my car when something stopped me. A man was leaning against the counter, laughing into his phone. He had that look, expensive watch, tailored clothes, the easy confidence of someone who knew they were wanted. "Yeah, man, she was all over me. Said her husband was boring as hell." He chuckled. "Can you believe that? Some poor guy out there thinks he's got it all figured out. Meanwhile his wife is sneaking around with." I froze. Every nerve in my body went on high alert. Couldn't be. The guy hadn't said a name. He hadn't given any details. But the way he talked, the arrogance in his voice, it made my skin crawl. I didn't even think. Before I knew it, I was walking straight up to him. "Who's the woman?" I asked, my voice calm, too calm. The guy turned to me, raising an eyebrow. "Excuse me? The woman you're talking about?" I repeated, locking eyes with him. "What's her name?" For a second, he just stared at me. Then a slow smirk spread across his face. "What, you think it's your wife or something?" he said, amused. "Buddy, if you have to ask, you already know the answer." Something inside me shifted. I had spent years being the quiet, reliable husband, the man who avoided conflict, the man who put his wife's happiness above everything else. And what had it gotten me? Nothing. I took a step closer, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I felt awake. The guy's smirk faltered, just a little. He wasn't expecting me to stand my ground. He was expecting the usual embarrassed husband, a man who would back down, who would look away. "Not tonight. Enjoy it while it lasts," I said, my voice steady. "Because trust me, it won't." I turned and walked out without another word. I didn't need to know for sure if it was Marlene. I already knew the kind of man she wanted. And if it wasn't this guy, it was someone like him. But she was about to learn something, too. She had spent years molding me into the perfect, safe husband. That version of me was gone. I got into my car, started the engine, and smiled for the first time that night. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I didn't go home that night. Couldn't. Instead, I drove aimlessly, letting the empty road stretch ahead like an open book, waiting to be filled with something new. The weight in my chest had lifted, but in its place was something else. A clarity I hadn't felt in years. I pulled over at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where the coffee was burnt, the floors were always slightly sticky, and the waitresses had seen too much of life to care about anything but getting through their shift. I slid into a booth, rubbing a hand down my face. I felt exhausted, but my mind was still running at full speed. I thought about Marlene, about her smug little smirk, about the way she had just decided I wasn't a man in her eyes anymore, like it was a fact written in stone. Had she ever respected me? Had I just been some reliable placeholder while she looked for someone better? The thought made my stomach twist. "What can I get you, hon?" I looked up. The waitress, a woman in her late 40s with kind eyes and a faded name tag that read Gloria, was staring at me, pen poised above her notepad. "Just coffee," I said. She nodded and shuffled off. I leaned back against the booth, staring out the window. The neon sign outside flickered, half the letters dead, leaving behind something unreadable. It felt fitting, like everything I thought I knew had been scrambled overnight, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. When Gloria returned, she set the coffee down with a knowing look. "Long night?" she asked. I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Something like that." She didn't push for details, just refilled a sugar dispenser at the counter, humming an old tune under her breath. And that's when it hit me. For the first time in a long time, I was alone. Not just physically, but emotionally. No expectations, no pressure. No one waiting for me at home with a sigh and a disappointed glance. And instead of feeling lost, I felt something else entirely: relief. I had spent so long trying to hold on to Marlene, bending over backward to be the man she wanted. But what if I didn't have to be? What if I could just exist on my own terms? What if, instead of mourning what I'd lost, I started building something better? I took a sip of the bitter coffee and made a decision. I wasn't going back. Not tonight, maybe not ever. I reached for my phone and scrolled through my contacts. There was only one person I wanted to talk to, someone I hadn't reached out to in years. I hesitated for a moment, then hit call. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice picked up. Gerald? Damn, man. I thought you were dead. I chuckled, shaking my head. Not dead. Just overdue for a change. Silence, then a knowing sigh. Marlene. I exhaled slowly. Yeah. She finally did it, huh? Yeah. About time you woke up. I frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means, my old friend said, I've been waiting for years for you to realize she never deserved you. I stared at the chipped edge of my coffee cup, his words settling deep. Maybe, just maybe, he was right. And maybe it was time to start proving it. I ended up at an old motel, the kind where the neon sign buzzed like an insect and half the rooms probably hadn't been cleaned properly in years. But I didn't care. I needed a place to think. The mattress was lumpy, the walls were thin, and the air smelled faintly of stale cigarettes. But it was the first time in a long time that I could breathe, really breathe. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. My conversation with my friend still echoed in my head. I've been waiting for years for you to realize she never deserved you. Had I really been that blind? I thought about the early days when Marlene and I first got together. Back then, everything felt easy. She made me feel like I was the luckiest guy in the world. But now, looking back, I could see the signs I had ignored. She had always needed more attention, more excitement, more of something I couldn't quite put my finger on. And anytime life settled into something comfortable, she grew restless, like a caged animal looking for an escape. The problem wasn't me. The problem was that I had built a life around a woman who never really wanted to be settled in the first place. I leaned back against the headboard, my eyes tracing the cracks in the ceiling. What now? I had never been the type to act impulsively. I had always been the steady one, the predictable one. But maybe that was exactly the problem. I pulled out my phone again and stared at the home screen. A photo of me and Marlene, taken last summer on a weekend trip. She was smiling, leaning against me, but now that I looked at it again, I could see it. The distance in her eyes. I should have known back then. I should have seen it. Without thinking, I opened my contacts and hovered over her name. For years, I had been the one to reach out, to fix things, to smooth over arguments before they turned into something bigger. But tonight, I didn't want to fix anything. I wanted to let it break. I exhaled slowly, then did something I never thought I'd do. I deleted her number. The moment I did, a strange sense of peace settled over me. Marlene had made her choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. For the first time in years, I had no idea what tomorrow would look like. And for the first time in years, I was excited to find out. I woke up to the sound of tires screeching in the parking lot. For a second, I didn't remember where I was. My eyes darted to the unfamiliar ceiling, then the stiff motel sheets, and finally to my phone on the nightstand. And then it hit me. I wasn't home. I wasn't in my house. And for the first time in a decade, I wasn't waking up next to Marlene. There was no distant hum of her blow dryer, no scent of her overpriced perfume lingering in the air, no cold, passive-aggressive silence as she scrolled through her phone pretending I didn't exist. I had always imagined that if I ever left, I'd feel crushed, that I'd be drowning in regret, wondering if I had made the right decision. But all I felt was relief, the kind that settles deep in your bones, the kind that tells you this was supposed to happen. I ran a hand down my face and sat up. The room was dimly lit by the early morning sun, streaks of gold cutting through the dusty blinds. I checked my phone out of habit. 12 missed calls, all from Marlene. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Not a single text message. No, I'm sorry. No, let's talk. Just calls. As if she wasn't reaching out because she wanted to fix anything. She was reaching out because she had lost control. And that's when I knew. She had never expected me to leave. She had expected me to fight for her, to beg, to prove to her that I could be more. She had expected me to chase after her, to remind her why she chose me in the first place. But she had miscalculated. Because I wasn't going to do any of that. I wasn't going to play into whatever twisted game she had been setting up. I wasn't going to fight for someone who had already decided I wasn't worth fighting for. I tossed the phone onto the bed and stood up, stretching out the stiffness in my limbs. Today was going to be different. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back. I threw on my jacket, grabbed my keys, and walked out of the motel room. The cold morning air hit my face like a wake-up call, but instead of making me shiver, it woke me up, and for the first time in years I felt alive. I didn't have a plan. That was the strangest part of all of this. My entire life had been built around structure, around doing the right thing, making responsible choices, building something stable. And yet here I was, driving down a highway with no real destination in mind, with nothing but a duffel bag of clothes and a half-empty coffee cup in my cup holder. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel trapped. The radio crackled softly in the background, playing some classic rock song that I barely recognized. The road stretched endlessly ahead of me, and for once, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for Marlene's next complaint. She had always been good at making me feel small, and the worst part? I let her criticisms seep into my skin. I let her dictate how I walked, how I talked, how I existed in my own damn home. Every decision I made had been filtered through the question, will this make Marlene happy? But now that question didn't matter anymore. My phone buzzed against the passenger seat. For a second, I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the best of me and I glanced down. A text from Gerald. Gerald, did you go back? I smirked. Not a chance. I typed back, a quick response. Me, I think I just quit my life. A few moments passed before the dots appeared. Gerald, good. It wasn't yours to begin with. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. He was right. My life with Marlene hadn't been mine. It had been hers. I had been a supporting character in her story, a placeholder until she decided she wanted something else. And now, for the first time, I had a blank page in front of me. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating. I pulled off at a small roadside diner, the kind with flickering neon signs and a parking lot full of semi-trucks, a place where nobody knew my name. I needed to sit, to think, to process what was happening. Inside, the scent of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air. A waitress, mid-50s, tired eyes but a warm smile, greeted me as I slid into a booth. Morning, hon. What can I get you? Just coffee, I said. Then, after a second, and maybe some pancakes. I think I need to remind myself what food tastes like when I'm not eating in a silent house. She chuckled, scribbling on her notepad. Rough night. I hesitated, then nodded. Rough decade. She gave me a knowing look before walking off. I leaned back in my seat, exhaling slowly. This was the first meal I had ordered just for me in a long time. Not to please Marlene, not to keep up some image of the perfect husband, just because I wanted pancakes. And somehow that felt like the first real decision I had made in years. The pancakes arrived steaming hot, drowning in syrup, with a side of crispy bacon that smelled like something close to heaven. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until that moment. I picked up my fork and took a bite, expecting just an average breakfast, but something about it hit differently. Maybe it was the fact that for the first time in years, I wasn't sitting across from Marlene, watching her pick at a salad while making some passive-aggressive comment about my food choices. You're really eating that? She'd say, her lips curling in amusement. Or worse, she'd give me that long, pitying look, the one that made me feel like a child instead of a grown man. I swallowed, forcing those memories away. This was different. This was mine. The waitress, whose name tag read Linda, returned with a fresh pot of coffee. She refilled my cup, glancing at me like she was debating whether to say something. Finally, she asked, "You passing through or running from something?" I let out a small chuckle, stirring my coffee. Maybe a little of both. She nodded knowingly. That's how most people end up here. I took another sip, feeling the warmth spread through me. And what about you? She smiled, shaking her head. Oh, I ran a long time ago. Just ended up stopping here. I wanted to ask more, but I got the feeling that was as much as she was willing to share. Linda moved on to another table, and I turned my attention back to my phone. Another text from Gerald. Gerald, you still breathing? Me eating pancakes like a free man. A few seconds later, he responded. Gerald, proud of you. Now what's the plan? The question made me pause. The plan. For so long, the plan had always been Marlene. Keeping her happy, keeping things stable, making sure our life followed the script we had written together. But that script had been shredded. I glanced around the diner, the truckers, the travelers, the people with their own stories, their own pasts and futures. I had spent my entire life trying to be someone. Something. Maybe it was time to just be me. Me. For the first time, I don't have one. Gerald responded almost immediately. Gerald, then maybe you're finally doing it right. I let out a slow breath. He was right. For the first time, I wasn't chasing after something. I wasn't trying to fix something that had been broken for years. I wasn't walking on eggshells, afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing. I was just existing. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. I finished my pancakes, left a generous tip for Linda, and walked out into the morning air. The world felt different, lighter. I climbed into my car, gripping the steering wheel, and smiled. This time, I wasn't driving away from something. I was driving toward whatever came next. I didn't check my phone again. Not for missed calls. Not for texts. Not for any desperate attempt from Marlene to reel me back in. Because none of it mattered anymore. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for someone else to tell me what to do. I wasn't trying to fit into a mold that someone else had carved for me. I wasn't walking a path someone else had mapped out. I was free. The diner faded into the rearview mirror as I pulled back onto the highway. The road stretched ahead, endless and open, and for the first time in years, I had no idea where I was going. And that was the best part. I rolled down the window, letting the crisp morning air rush in, filling my lungs with something new, something that felt like possibility. Marlene had once told me I wasn't a real man, that I wasn't enough, that I was predictable, safe, boring. But she had never understood what real strength was. It wasn't about arrogance. It wasn't about proving something to her or anyone else. It was about knowing when to walk away. It was about realizing my worth didn't come from her approval. It was about finally choosing me. And as I drove toward whatever was waiting for me next, I realized something. For the first time in a long, long time, I was happy.